I think so many people are going to be interested in Narcan. Like,
Absolutely. Most people, I mean, it's coming around now. It's more marketable. They have it in the stores.
sure.
But a lot of people, when we introduce it to them, they don't know what it does. They're like, they didn't even know it was possible to save somebody from overdose.
That's crazy. So to get this kicked off, Tommy, can you give us a little bit of background about who you are, how you got involved in the fentanyl space, and just your background so that
Sure.
there's precedence for the rest of the podcast?
Absolutely. 10 years in recovery, but it didn't take me 10 years to get into recovery. I'm 41 years old. I've been in and out for years. It finally stuck, but growing up in Miami, I had both parents. I had pretty good life, everything I could ask for, but I still developed a substance use disorder. First use was at 15 years old. And then I started ripping and running since then. It was kind of a self-medication for my mental health, which I had a lot of anxiety and depression. And so along the way, a lot of stuff has happened, a lot of consequences because of my use. And, I was pretty severe where, in and out of jail, lost jobs, lost school, lost relationships, suicide attempts, in the psych ward. These are, all these things directly related to my substance use. And, luckily I had the support of family and friends. And, after numerous attempts, it kind of stuck. But getting into recovery is when I realized, hey, I wanted to help and help other people that are like myself, right? And that's when I went back to school. I got a few degrees in mental health counseling, and got my master's. And
Give your master's, congratulations.
Yeah,
That's a big spin around, brother.
yeah, well, especially from I barely graduated high school to I didn't go back to school till I was in my 30s, right? And so thinking that I wanted to be a therapist at the time, that's why I went back to school. And then it evolved into I started a nonprofit in recovery, and then this is now my second nonprofit that I've started that's more focused on not just people looking for recovery, but more along the lines of just saving lives of anybody, whether they are on this end of just trying for the first time or this end of having a severe substance use disorder, right? Because it's affecting everyone. It's not just people that have a huge problem. It's people trying for the first time.
Interesting, man. Okay, so just to back things up, so recovery means helping people that are addicted, or what would you define recovery?
Recovery,
as?
for me, it means for me it was stopping the use of harmful substances, but it's not necessarily the same thing for everybody. It really is for me plugging back into life and getting rid of the consequences of my use, and finding purpose in my life.
Okay.
Right. And so we just did an event yesterday called Recovery at the Park, and it was to celebrate all the different kinds of recovery.
Sure.
Some people go to 12-step meetings to find recovery. Some people will go to church to find recovery. Some people will go to a therapist and find recovery there. And it's all for the same purpose. It's to stop the bad stuff from happening.
Sure.
And live a productive life. So,
Okay. So that's kind of your definition of recovery. Now you've been in it 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
As of today or yesterday, you said?
As of the September 12th, 2014.
Okay.
That was my last drink and use, yeah.
That's crazy, man. Yeah. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you. Oh, wow. So my mom, she was never into hard drugs or anything, but a little win for her. She's very proud of her sober counter. Like she's got a sober counter, right?
Yeah, the app.
And she is so proud of that thing. And she attributes a lot of her success in life to becoming sober. Mm-hmm. So I think she's been sober for approaching 5 years now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like Congrats. No booze, no weed, no anything, whatever. And I would go out. So I'm 27, and I would go out and party. And my mom would be like, you need to stop drinking. Like, you're going to see such a bigger income. Like, money just flows differently when you stop that. So I'm like, okay. So I'm about a year in to no booze. Yeah, no booze, no weed. I do take nicotine. So I'll smoke a cigar.
Yeah.
This is nicotine gum. It makes me more talkative.
Okay.
So that's been an amazing journey.
Well, that is a huge benefit as well, right? And your mom has a good point, and I'm sure you're experiencing that.
Yes.
Where you're like, before you were probably working like over here at a 5, and now you're like up here, productive. You're able to wake up early. You're able to show up. It does have financial gains as well as emotional and spiritual.
Life longevity. I want to live a long time, you know. And I was operating at like you said, maybe a 5, like wavelength wise. I feel like I was kind of, but now it's just my decision making skills are at a way heightened level. Yeah. So it's been interesting, and I know that's not nearly as kind of deep as the stuff that we're talking about or we're working in.
It could be.
Okay.
Honestly, alcohol it kills a lot of people, right? Whether in the long term or the short term, health issues, right? The driving, and then not to mention the things that people do when they're under the influence.
Sure.
Right. There's
bad decisions.
There's a prisons full of people that made bad decisions under the influence.
100%.
Right. And so it's very confusing or misleading because it's legal. Right. But some of the worst things can be done with alcohol. And then when you compare it to like weed, right? Not very many people get as violent as when you're drinking alcohol, right? Yeah. And so it's different things. Everybody has a different vice, but it's always something to be aware of, right?
Sure.
Because we think, I only drink, I'm not that bad, but bad things can happen.
I got arrested drinking one time. I spent the night in the jail in the drunk tank, and it was crazy. I was in college, bro.
Would not happen if
exactly. Exactly. Most traumatizing experience of my life.
Yeah.
Like, dude, orange jumpsuit, like pushing the button. Hey, when am I gonna get out? They're like, we don't care about you. I felt stripped of everything. Dude, traumatizing.
The worst experience is to go in there and like, I don't belong here. I don't feel like this is now, but that's happened to me numerous times.
Sure, dude.
Right? Because my family raised me a certain way. I know right from wrong. That goes out the window when I'm drinking, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not like I'm gonna get arrested every single time I drink. But can I predict how the night is gonna go every time I drink? No. So it's better for me to just
abstain. The unknown, right? Like when you're drinking, it kind of becomes an unknown. Like
absolutely. Yeah. And with other drugs, it's different. There's risk of overdose and psychosis and all these different things,
Sure.
And I don't think it's inherently the drugs, they're just bad, it's just, there's a lot of contributing factors, right? With like opioids and fentanyl and all these, the drug supply is just, it's tainted. You can't get with your, if I go and I want to buy, not that I am, but I'm gonna buy a bag of cocaine.
Yeah,
I will be lucky if there's a small portion of cocaine in it, and there's gonna be like 100 other substances in there.
Really?
And
what other substances are we talking? So for me, right, I look at Miami like it should be one of the most pure cocaine markets.
Absolutely.
You would think because you got Colombia right there.
No. There's no. I mean, maybe if you go to Colombia and get it, but like that's the thing. It's gonna go through a number of different people's hands before it gets into the buyer's hands.
And they mix it and add stuff
and
because
then
they
makes more money.
Yeah,
right?
So they just add a bunch of crap to it, and then okay.
And so you're lucky if you get baby laxative in it, but on the inside, it maybe have fentanyl in it, right? And so that's
which we were talking off camera. I know. I think last year spring break or 2 years ago spring break, I remember reading in the newspaper like 2 kids overdosed on spring break in Fort Lauderdale. I'm like, Fort Lauderdale, that's way close to home.
Yeah, and it was a big news story. But that's happening every day. Every day. People are dying. I'm believing it's upwards of like 200 people a day dying from overdose.
That's insane,
right? This is an epidemic, right? Upwards of 107,000 overdose deaths a year.
That's insane.
Right? That's more than the Vietnam War. That's 2 Vietnam Wars, right?
Sure.
And so it is something huge, and it has to be on people's radar because it's not getting any better. And, the fact that there's no regulation, you cannot regulate illegal drugs, right? And so it's a black market. If I go and buy I bought this and it doesn't have what I paid for, who am I gonna go to?
Yeah, you can't go to the cops. This guy ripped me off.
I got a receipt. No, it's not. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
You know, but that's how it was with alcohol back in the day too, when it was illegal.
Prohibition.
There were, underground, right? And it was too strong. People were dying.
Moonshine.
Right? People were dying from drinking it. And you couldn't regulate it. There was no regulation.
Sure.
And so it's the same thing nowadays with other drugs.
Interesting. This is very interesting, man. Okay, so now what's the name of your
The organization? Yeah, it's called F Fentanyl
Okay.
Inc. Can
Like
I curse
fuck
here?
fentanyl. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's fuck fentanyl, but legally F fentanyl, right? And so our main goal is harm reduction, right? The main goal is save lives, and then secondary, if people want to find recovery or go to treatment or go to detox or find some mental health services, we can link them to that. But that's not our primary purpose. Our primary purpose is how can we make sure that you're gonna be alive to live another day or to party another day, whatever it may be.
Sure.
Because these drugs are contaminated.
Okay.
Right.
So your company name is called Fuck Fentanyl.
Correct.
Or F Fentanyl. Now, you call it that, but you work in all various different types of drugs you mentioned. Okay. So why did you choose fentanyl as the company name?
Because it is the biggest killer right now, right?
Okay.
And fast forward 10 years, 20 years, it may be something else, right? And maybe we'll change our name, but like it has when you hear that F fentanyl or fuck fentanyl, right? You say that to somebody that lost somebody, you say that to somebody that's been affected.
They're getting behind that.
They're angry, man.
Yeah.
Because it's not overdose, honestly. It's people are getting poisoned. Right? Because if I take, again, cocaine, I take cocaine and I have a cocaine overdose, I knew that might happen. But if I overdose of fentanyl from taking cocaine, that means that's a poison. I was not looking for that.
I wasn't trying to ingest that.
Yeah, and that's the most of the case. People are looking for a different substance. I'm taking a Adderall. I wanted to study laced with fentanyl. Person passed away.
Damn. Okay.
Right?
So where did this fentanyl originate from? Like, how is it being introduced? How is it created? When did it start to be introduced? Like, can we dive into the history? I guess?
Absolutely. And so just to be clear, there is good use for fentanyl. This is medical fentanyl, right? Medical grade fentanyl is used in hospitals all the time, used for pain, used for, late stage, cancer diagnosis, stuff like that. They have these patches that people can use, and it helps with the pain.
So it's a pain med.
Yeah. What we're talking about is not that. This is illicit fentanyl that is being manufactured in places like Mexico with the ingredients that are coming from China, right? And so,
damn.
What is
what kind of ingredients are we talking?
Well, I can't give you the exact names of everything, but the precursor ingredients, right? They can be shipped from China. They're not going to ship fentanyl as it is, altogether. So they ship the ingredients to Mexico, and then the so-called chemists
cook it up,
right? They don't have a degree. They're not really chemists, right? They're just
exploratory chemists.
Makeshift chemists, right? They say, "Hey, I'll do it," and they're not in a sterilized lab. They're not in a lab setting. They're not in a university setting. They are in the jungles, right, of Mexico, and makeshift labs, with big bins.
So this sounds similar to cocaine. Like, I feel like there's so many Netflix documentaries, Cocaine Cowboys. We're in Miami. Miami was built off a lot of that time, right? So when I'm thinking of this, I'm relating it to cocaine. And what I remember is people in Colombia with barrels filled with gasoline, and then they're pouring like the cocaine into the gasoline or something along that line. So similar process. It sounds
similar
like.
Process. It's a different,
concoction
that they're making, right?
Yeah.
But the whole goal behind it for the cartels is to make money, right? And when you talk to those cartels, right, you talk to the people making it. Right, these are people trying to feed their families, or people that are trying to
normal people, man.
Right, but
trying to make
they try to detach from the outcome of what happens.
Sure.
They're saying, no, these people they know what they're taking. They know there's a risk of and that's trying to take the guilt away from them.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Of course.
But in reality is that most of the kids and most of the people are not intentionally trying to take fentanyl.
Sure.
There's a small portion of people that will seek out fentanyl and say, hey, I want fentanyl. But these people developed a tolerance for opioids over time.
Sure.
Right? So they started maybe with prescription pills, lead to heroin, and now they're on fentanyl.
Is that the typical translation? Like, that's how it goes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because of the stronger drugs and, the tolerance, right? But people that are being laced with fentanyl, they don't have no tolerance. So that's instant overdose.
So now when we talk about the making of these fentanyl in being shipped over from China into Mexico, now these are they like liquids you would mix together?
Liquids and powders, yes.
Liquids and powders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they come in these jugs,
Sure.
right? They come in jugs and they drop them off in the waters. They pick the cartel members come pick it up, and then they take it to the makeshift labs where they're
the jungle or wherever
they make it. Yeah.
Okay. So now when fentanyl is created, the finished product, is it a powder? Is it a liquid? What's the finished product?
Yeah, for the most part, it is a powder, right?
Okay.
But it comes in all forms, right? And it's like odorless, and it's hard to you can't smell it, right?
Wow.
And and also there's a lot of different drugs being manufactured, right? So like there's possibility of fentanyl spilling into the meth and to all this other stuff, you know what I mean? And so and also it's just so many different levels of being cut as it goes down the pipeline of distribution
Sure.
to the local dealers, right?
Sure.
And a lot of the local dealers, they don't know there's fentanyl in their product, right? Which is not good for business.
Sure.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of people being hit with homicide cases.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So this takes me. Okay. So like before we get into that, I'm still trying to map this out like in history, right?
Yeah.
To kind of figure out. But I'm gonna write a note down about Mac Miller. Do you know that singer?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I want to talk about him because I think his drug dealer got in trouble and all that stuff. But let's keep going down this history before we get in there. So okay, so it comes from China. They make it in Mexico. Now getting it up here, right? I'm assuming that they do it via trucks over the border. I've heard cruise ships. I've heard like oil tankers.
They're very, very good at doing that. Of course, crossing the border, whether it be through directly through in cars, but like they got underground tunnels and stuff like that. It's stuff we've seen in the
mules, right? They have like mules with it, which is like people that would carry it.
The thing with fentanyl is that it is so potent and strong, right? That you make way more money, right, with a smaller amount than if you were like transporting heroin, right? So 2 milligrams of fentanyl is enough for somebody to overdose. That's like a couple grains of salt, right?
Really?
Right? So like imagine a kilo worth of fentanyl, right? That's enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people.
So when you say kilo, can you put that in cocaine terms? It would be like a brick of cocaine.
Yeah, a brick. Yeah.
Okay, so if you have a brick of fentanyl, how much is that worth?
I could be off on this, but I'm thinking $60K, something like that.
$60K.
Yeah.
And how much is it for a brick of cocaine?
That's I can't get into the logistics. I haven't got into that in a while.
That's cool that you don't know. I'm just trying to like put this into perspective for the audience, for example.
It is the thing is that you use a smaller amount, right, to have the bigger effect, right? And so that's the main reason they switched to fentanyl. It's
just more profitable.
Just a lot less to make more money, right? And that's the name of the game.
I mean, it's like the food companies charging us more but feeding us less at all the fast food restaurants because of inflation,
right? And
so
it would be the means of it's still filling us up with less, right? You know what I mean? Like
I see what you're saying.
Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it has more effect.
I see what you're saying. So it's dually good. They're making more money, but it's also a better high. Different high, or it is super high, whatever you want to call it.
It works. It does what it's intended to do, right?
Okay.
Now,
when you're high on this drug, what are the effects? Like, what is it doing to you? Like, do you smoke it? Do you eat it?
Right.
Do you snort it?
you can do all that.
All
yeah,
of it.
Yeah. It's an opioid, so it's gonna put it's pain for pain relief, right? So it's gonna numb you. It's gonna kind of similar to heroin, where you're gonna be nodding out, and then,
Hunched over. I
yeah,
see all those people that kind of look like zombies that are hunched over. That's a
yeah.
big fentanyl thing.
It's fentanyl a lot of times mixed with xylazine, which is also called trank,
Okay.
right? Which works very similarly. It's not an opioid, but they been using that as well to cut into the supply, right? Because it acts similarly,
Okay.
right? But that also it's mixing different substances together, it increases likelihood of overdose as well. So it's all
Your body's trying to deal with a bunch of different things, right? Maybe up or downer. Is that a
well,
big problem?
The xylazine is still a downer too. It's still going to do the same
So
effect.
do drug dealers typically mix downers with downers, or do they ever?
Well, you would think that, but as of lately, we've seen cocaine laced with fentanyl, right? And that's
So
an
upper,
upper and a
downer.
downer, right?
So your body's like,
And
ah.
I couldn't understand that in the beginning. It was like, well, it doesn't make sense, It's like
Yeah.
I'm trying to, but there's a couple different theories. Which one is that you get physically addicted with opioids after like a couple of times using, so your body craves that after, right? And then if you don't use, you will get into withdrawal. Another theory is that it's intentionally being done that as a weapon of mass destruction to kill us by us taking it ourselves, right? It's no guns involved, no, you know what I'm saying? And so that's
So this is something that I want to dive into, kind of like government involvement, maybe. I've heard a little bit. So now one thing, let's keep going down this path a little bit. So I've heard that whether it be the government, the feds, I don't know what you want to call it, but I've heard that when they're trying to drop packages in Miami, whether like they fly over, drop a package, and then somebody goes on a boat and goes and picks it up or whatever. I don't know if this is true. But I've heard that if the government finds it, they will hold it, make you pay for it, and then send it back, and you can just retry again. I don't know if that's true.
I cannot confirm. I haven't heard that, so
Okay.
I can't confirm that. But talking about government, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if government is involved in some level of, because all you got to do is go back to the 80s, right? And it's documented that the government was involved in drugs.
Break that down. I'm not aware, so let's
Yeah,
hit that hard.
So with the crack epidemic, right, in the 80s, there was there was a war going on in Nicaragua, right? And the U.S. wanted to support the rebels in doing that. And to fund the war, they sent cocaine to the United States. And the government
Makes total sense.
And the government looked the other way. They allowed that.
Insane amounts of money.
Right. They knew about it. And not only that, they let the communities take the fall for everything, right? So these communities are getting the cocaine in there, creating crack, and they're giving them mandatory minimums, and they're going to jail for draconian amounts of time, right? And the government knows all about it, right? And that's there's a book called Dark Web, I believe it's called.
Okay.
And it details all that, right? And so it's like, okay,
This is so interesting.
This has happened before, so I wouldn't, put that away. And that's Reagan era and Bush era, and then Nixon, even with the war on drugs, it's admitted that the war on drugs was BS, and it was specifically to target minorities and for political advantage, right? Because if we can arrest people because of these drugs, we can take them out of contention with.
So I look at a place like Kensington, Philadelphia. Are you familiar with?
Yeah.
Everybody's leaning over. I see people driving down. I follow a TikToker that just goes and walks, and like, it's so interesting because it's such a foreign world. So I feel like there's a lot of interest in there. People are uneducated, like myself. I'm not saying I'm educated. That's why we're here, right? I love just learning about this stuff because it is so interesting. It's a whole nother world.
Yeah.
Right. So I look at something like Kensington, for example, or I guess those people that are on this drug, they're super calm.
Yeah.
Which I think the government would love.
Yeah.
Because if you got a bunch of people that are taking drugs and going crazy and eating people, like remember that guy that got knocked that face on? That was a crazy story.
Bath salts.
Yeah, bath salts, right? Like you want people, if they're going to be addicted to something, you want them super chill and not like causing a chaos, like
ruckus.
Running and charging the freaking Capitol. You know what I mean? Like that, for example. Like, so this is where it comes interesting to me. Is I'm like, I feel like maybe this is total conspiracy theory. It was introduced by them. Maybe a like government introduction of fentanyl because it keeps people like calm and not aggressive. What are your thoughts and takes and opinions on that theory? I guess.
I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, there's so many things that have happened that I was like, nah, that's impossible. And it comes out to be true. I'll tell you what, it's affecting a lot of people, right? And so you got, I said, 107,000 people dying a year
for overdose,
right? So multiply that times how many families being affected, right? How many family members being affected, right? And
yeah, so, you got like 10 people that are close to everybody, or to one person.
Exactly, right?
It's them. It's those 10 people.
Yeah. And so,
kids,
you know, saw how fast people reacted to the COVID epidemic, right? And all these things going down and everything like that. I'm like, where's that with, with this, you know what I mean?
There has to be some government intervention because otherwise you would think.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, there is money being brought into this and stuff like that, but they're going at a very slow pace, and there's solutions that we know can help that are not being
like what?
More funding for harm reduction, more funding for recovery support services. Treatment's great too, and law enforcement, but like it shouldn't all go to, hey, we gotta go to law enforcement that gets most of the money, and then treatment and recovery gets a small amount. It should be opposite. Right.
Treatment and recovery gets most of the money, and then that trickles up to the
and it should be treated as a health issue as opposed to, like a punitive issue. Of course, with the drug dealers, the major drug dealers, but like, it shouldn't be for the people using that being affected. Going to jail is not going to help anybody. You know what I mean? Treatment is needed, recovery support service, harm reduction, So like if you don't have insurance, right, the wait to get into treatment is a long time.
I see a lot of people that like are having foot issues, elephantitis maybe or something in their foot, and then or like a hole.
Yeah.
Like, does the fentanyl eat holes in your body?
That's not the fentanyl. That's the xylazine. That's
xylazine.
Yeah. So it'll leave big holes and lesions, and it doesn't necessarily only happen when you're injecting. It happens even if you're snorting or you're using it in other ways, and they don't heal.
They don't even want to go, I feel like, right? Yeah. They're just like comfortable. Well, like
the thing is that a lot of them don't have access because like at that point,
you're so deep in the hole.
You're deep, and you're not even living in the house. You're on the street, and so many different barriers, right?
So I guess one thing that's interesting that you just mentioned, there's different levels to this. Mm-hmm. There's like the homeless that are in Kensington on the streets sleeping there, like just nothing. Like they're kind of almost like committed their life to.
For those folks, for the majority of those folks, they're going to the dealer and asking, "Hey, I want fentanyl, right? I want this."
That's their drug of choice,
right? And
on purpose.
Yeah, so it's kind of like they've been using to the point where that's why they're not dying immediately. Well, they're dying, but
long time because they have a tolerance.
Yeah, most of them have tolerance. Mm-hmm. And then you have, casual users that are still in danger, right? That. Hey, I'm going to the club. I want to use this, or I want to take some Molly, and I'm going to this music festival. They're in danger too, right? Or there's young kids that are they don't know the dangers, right? And they're trying a pill that they got off social media, or they got it from a family member, and they don't make it to see that bottom. It's done, And I saw like some research where it is showing that young people are using less, but the overdose deaths are higher. So what that means is that there is some education. Some people they're learning about it, but the drugs are so strong that it's killing them.
this brings up, this is more of a personal side. This is interesting. So when I was in high school, there was a gentleman who smoked weed that was laced with something, and he became a vegetable, meaning he was like 17 years old, but he was stuck in the mind of a 12-year-old. I don't know what happened within there. Something happened to his body, and he was just stuck, right? Stuck at 12. So his dad comes in, and they bring us into the auditorium, and we don't really know what's going on. But his dad gives a speech, and he's like, hey, be very careful of these drugs, all these things. This happened. He was a very intelligent kid, and now he's stuck at 12 years old. Wow. So that was very eye-opening to me on the knowledge side and just starting to get educated, right? So I'd always been very, very like careful of this stuff. I always knew about it. Never been like a big drug user by any means. I took Molly one time, only after my friends took some of the same. To make sure that I was going to live. I was like, I was like, you guys can test this out for me. Like they had the tester. I don't know too much about it, whatever. But they tested it. They took it. The next day they were fine. Everybody can react differently. So I was still very, very nervous, right? Any man-made drug to me is risky. Yeah. Very risky. It's man-made. It's not like weed that's growing out in the backyard or whatever the case is. So taking this, I was very nervous. I took that, only took it once, will never take it again. Therapeutic. Very interesting. Extremely interesting to me. I'm sitting at a concert and I'm like just having the best time, but within and just me. It wasn't an external, like, so I feel like some people become external and have great experiences, or some people become internal and have great experiences. Mine was internal introspection. I'm sitting there, best time, and I'm like, if I can be this happy on a drug, I can be this happy in day-to-day life. Yeah. So I don't know what happened, but man, I learned that I didn't need, I was like, this is possible. Like this is a possible feeling. So I just tried to recreate that, and it really did change my perspective on quite a bit of things.
Well, there's so, I mean, and there's research being opened up now, days like with MDMA and with psychedelics.
Joe Rogan does psychedelics all the time.
And so there's that's what we kind of
interesting.
All right, we got to explore these. You know, there's always room for danger in drugs, right? In different all drugs, even medications that are prescribed.
I don't take any pharma. Right. Well, I am so against pharma. It's not even funny.
But even then, like, there's dangers in all that, right?
100%.
And you know, there's a whole nother conversation about how they want you to stay addicted to it. But
did you know the United States is one of the only 2 countries in the world that allows pharmaceuticals to advertise on television?
Yeah. And
that's whack.
You know, and that's why we're using the most amount of medications, right? But as the research opens up, they're going to see that there's other things available. With that, though, has to be the ability to get these substances without the fear of it being tainted. Yeah, that's the problem.
You see, I'm starting to see some psychedelic therapy spots open up, like mushrooms and all these. I think could be good, dude.
I mean, again, with regulation, because there's always the bad characters out there, right? You know, and I haven't used drugs in 10 years, but I am a proponent for regulation, right? Because what affects me may not affect other people. You know, it's different for everybody. Not everybody that drinks alcohol has a problem, right?
I feel like that comes from like the experiences you see as you grow up. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain that.
Well, it's a number of different things that can contribute to, you know, especially, you know, childhood trauma and stuff like that can contribute to that and increase the likelihood of developing problems later on, especially with addiction or mental health.
Sure.
But again, you know, it all comes down to regulation and being able to trust what you're taking.
The product you're getting.
Yeah, because, you know, again.
I know a lot of people will go to like Tulum, and I think it's called like Smoke the Toad. Or is that MDMA or whatever it's called?
I think that's DMT.
DMT?
Yeah.
I just remember somebody telling a story. I think it was like Megan Fox and MGK or something. And she was like a cabinet her whole trip. And this is like a 15-minute trip, but it becomes like a life-changing event, and it feels like a long time. Some people have good trips, some people have bad trips, and then they kind of come out of it, and it's like well, that changed my life, good or bad. You know what I mean? And that is so interesting. I've always been like, I've kind of always had I want to try that like attitude, but I'm very scared.
Well, again, it's who am I trusting with this process?
Exactly.
And what's going to happen? And there's always dangers in every area, even when regulated, right? You
100%.
gotta be with a professional. You gotta take it under the supervision of a professional. Look at what is it, Matthew Perry, right? With the ketamine, right? They were selling him the ketamine, and he was doing it on his own, and that's not how it was intended. It's supposed to be special therapy with professionals observing. None of that was going on.
Did he pass away? Yeah. I don't know the story with him.
Yeah, Matthew Perry from Friends.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
in his bathtub, did he pass away?
He was like in his hot tub or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. I do remember reading that.
Yeah, but they put a case against the people that were selling it to him.
Okay, let's dive into Mac Miller now. This is a perfect transition, I think. So, I just remember Mac Miller being an incredible musician.
Awesome, yeah.
And so many people were so heartbroken when he passed away. And my buddy was here the other day, and we're listening to his music, and I was like, man, that's such a crazy story. And I remember, and I don't know if this is 100% truth or not, but I just remember them releasing text messages or DMs on Instagram from his drug dealer saying, I'm screwed, or they're going to get me, because he was the one that sold the drugs. Yeah. So now, was fentanyl involved in that case? Yeah. It was an overdose on fentanyl?
He took, I believe it was like a Xanax that was laced with fentanyl.
Okay. So now they came after the drug dealer. Did the drug dealer ever get time?
I believe so. I would have to look that up, but I remember seeing something about him definitely getting in trouble, and especially that it's a big celebrity, right?
Yeah, huge guy.
Yeah. But that's usually, it depends on the state you're in, right? Where you're at, and some people don't know. Like some people are not dealers. I just happen to be the middleman. Yeah. And I got you this, and that some people are getting manslaughters and homicides.
Do you think that that's the right way to approach it?
Again, it's situational, right? Because some people, it was not. They didn't know there was fentanyl. They were using too, right? And they were in the same boat.
I tell you, it stopped me from selling any type of drugs ever in my life. I don't want that responsibility, man.
That's scary, man.
I was just like, so some people, when they get drunk, they like fight, for example. I will never fight anybody in my life. Heaven forbid I punch somebody, they fall, they hit their head, they pass away, and I'm on the hook for manslaughter.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Is like,
no way.
For I guess bigger scale dealers, 100%, they need to be accountable for that. But if you're somebody's friend and you just happen to, that's a different story. You know what I mean? A lot of the folks have their own substance use issues, and it's just, we're all using together, but for dealers and for intentional people that are not, cartels, 100%, higher level dealers, that they should know what their product has if they're selling in a major scale.
Crazy,
right? They should be testing their shit, man. If you're selling stuff, I'm not condoning selling drugs, but if this is what you're gonna do, you gotta make sure that you're not gonna kill nobody, man. Yeah. And for the lower level people, it's a different ball game now, man. You gotta have the Narcan. You gotta have these things called test strips, right, where you're testing the substance.
Where do people get test strips?
Well, they're in the state of Florida, they are illegal now.
Illegal?
Legal. They're good.
I was gonna say they better be legal.
July 1st of last year, it came into law that they are legal. Prior to that, they had old laws because of like cocaine and the purity from the 80s, right, where you couldn't have any tests, and it was listed as paraphernalia. Now,
that's wild. Trying to protect yourself.
Yeah. Now it's available. I've seen them CVS, Amazon, or any place that does drug testing, like urine tests. They sell those too. That's what it is. It's for urine tests. Damn. But they use it.
You said you can buy it on Amazon.
Yeah.
Man, if you're doing drugs out there, buy those fucking test strips.
Yeah, very simple to use.
Well, you just dunk it in. Yeah, you got
it. Here. Let me see. Let me open this up here.
Is that a test strip right there?
Right. So it's basically a little strip here. I know you can't see it too good there, but it's a little strip, and the main thing here is that you're gonna test the substance that you're using. The best way would be probably to get like a bottle of water, like this. Get the cap from the bottle, fill it with water, and then you're gonna get a portion of the substance. If it's cocaine, like a powder already, mix it up very thorough, and you're gonna put a small amount into the water and stir it, and then put the test strip in there, 15 seconds, and then you're gonna let it set, and then it's gonna have a reading of 1 line or 2 lines.
Kind of like a pregnancy test.
Pregnancy test, COVID test is very similar. And then you're gonna have some more information to help you make a better decision what you're gonna do.
So this in specific is a fentanyl test strip.
This one's for fentanyl, but they have for every single substance. Yeah.
What else should people be testing for?
Xylazine.
Okay, so test for xylazine.
Xylazine, because that also it puts you at risk for an overdose.
Does Narcan help xylazine and fentanyl, or just fentanyl?
Only opioids. With fentanyl is an opioid. Xylazine by itself will not work with Narcan, but for the majority of the time, it's mixed with opioids.
Yeah, that's what
so
you're saying.
You want to use that anyway, and you can do the rescue breathing, but I would recommend having like a CPR mask so you don't spread any of that. But that would help with the xylazine part of the overdose.
Okay, so xylazine and fentanyl are the 2 big things that they should be testing for.
Yeah, 100%. For those are the ones that I would absolutely tell you to test for.
Now this is Narcan right here. Can you talk a little bit? Maybe hold it up so the camera can try to see it.
Right.
But so it comes in a package like that.
Right. So this is it's a single dose. Right. Each box will have 2 of these things in it. And let's just take that. Right. So basically, it's a nasal spray, very simple to use. Right. Basically, putting the this part into the nose and then pressing the plunger.
Okay.
And then you're waiting 2 to 3 minutes. So if a person is overdosing, opioid overdosing, they're gonna be laid out, right? They're not gonna be responsive.
Are they breathing?
They may be breathing, but not regularly. They're gonna be a regular person is like 20 breaths per minute. This is gonna be like 10 or less breaths per minute.
So barely.
Or not breathing at all, right? And so you may hear a gurgling sound that sounds like they're snoring. That's the airway closing up. What you're looking for signs of an overdose is the pinpoint pupils, very tiny. Even when the light is shining and taken out, they stay the same size.
Is that why the cops come and check your eyes? Okay.
Yeah. And then lips, nails, likely to turn blue. If it's a darker complexion person, it'll be like purplish gray. But that's the lack of oxygen, and that's why it causes discoloration, right? And then they're just a non-responsiveness, right? All those telltale signs of a opioid overdose.
So when you're in an opioid overdose, what happens to your body? Why are you overdosing? What is happening?
So all of us, we have opioid receptors, right? Doesn't matter if you use opioids or you don't use opioids. We all have opioid receptors. And so when somebody takes opioid, whether it's for pain or just to use, it's going to attach to the opioid receptor.
In your brain.
In your brain. And so when that happens, that's what causes the slowing of the breathing, the numbing of the pain, and ultimately an overdose, right? If somebody overdoses and you give them Narcan, right, this will take the place, the Narcan will take the place, the active ingredient is called naloxone, right? So I may say naloxone or Narcan, same thing. It takes the place of the opioids on the opioid receptor. So it will bounce them off and take the place. When that happens, the opioids don't disappear. They're waiting to reattach. But the Narcan will stay attached 30 to 90 minutes. So during that window, you want to make sure that they've received medical attention, that 911 has been called, that the ambulance is.
And then if you would just get another Narcan after those 30 to 90?
They can do that, but the goal is to get them the medical attention, because when somebody is given Narcan and it takes effect, that person's going to be in withdrawal. So they're going to be dope sick. They're going to feel nauseous. They're going to feel sick. They're gonna feel pain. They're gonna be confused, right? And they want to get rid of that feeling, right?
So they're going to do it again.
So they may use again, right? That being said, you're still blocked 30, 90 minutes. I can use as much as I want. It's still blocked.
Sure. And then if you're using a bunch of like, why isn't this hitting? Then there's probably another very high chance for an OD on the back of the Narcan.
100%.
Because you're like shooting, or it's taking, it's not attaching.
That's exactly what happens is that people will use and it's not hitting.
Yeah.
And once that Narcan wears off, they overdose. Instantly.
Again. Yeah.
And it may happen with the initial opioids that they use, right? So that's what we're always calling 911 so they can steadily.
Now, if they don't have insurance, for example, like majority of these people probably don't have health insurance. Yeah. So when you call an ambulance on somebody that's overdosing, yes, the main goal is to save their life. I totally understand. But how does that translate to the person on the back end not having insurance? Like, do they just go and then they're stuck with this big medical bill that they probably can't pay and it's on their credit report or whatever?
I can't speak on that. I know they will take them to the hospital. They will make sure that they're not going to overdose again.
Yeah.
But they'll give them the naloxone in either intravenously or so that way they don't overdose and die again even after they've been revived, right? Because that happens, right? Oh no, I don't want to go with the ambulance. They watch.
I've seen, that's why I asked this question, because I've seen some TikToks or some videos of like somebody getting Narcan, like, oh, he's overdosing, give him Narcan. And then the ambulance shows up and they're like, no. They just like stand up and run away. This guy literally just stood up and ran away. I was like,
yeah, well, you gotta, looking from a person with a substance use disorder point of view is if I go to the ambulance, I go to the hospital, I'm going to be taken away from what I want to do for probably a full day at least. Yeah. Right. And I don't know what's going to happen there. Are they going to question me? Are they going to do all this,
go to jail?
Yeah. So I'm not trying to
100%.
get
I understand it. Yeah.
Right? But for the person that's calling for help and trying to help this person, you do want to encourage them to
That's the right thing to
around.
do. Yeah.
You want to encourage them to stick around and call 911 and let them make the decision if they're going to go to the hospital. The ambulance will absolutely try to get them to go because they know that they're going to they may overdose after the fact.
So now let's dive into opioid. It's from opium, which is a plant, right?
So you have opium, right? Is a plant, and you can make opiates, and then you have opioids synthetically made to mimic opiates, right? So
so opiates is the natural version,
correct, and then opioids
is chemically made,
but they're chemically the same, right? And so, but there's a lot of different analog versions of different substances that act similarly, maybe a little bit more potent here and there, but when you look at opium, right, and making, you got to have fields of these plants and do all this stuff. And,
not profitable.
Yeah, exactly.
Or less profitable. It's always about money, man.
Yeah, so when it comes to synthetic, you're able to do it in the lab and not have to worry. When it comes to the dealers, at least you're not worried about these big fields of stuff being detected.
That's interesting. Okay, so Narcan, when you shoot that up the nose, it just goes straight into the system?
You show it right here. I mean, once you use it, you can't reuse it. So I'll show it right here. All right. Once that's up, that's the dose is done. The plunger's up there. You have just used your first dose. You're gonna wait that 2 to 3 minutes, and hopefully that's enough to revive that person. If that first one doesn't work, then you can give another one after that. But you don't want to just jam like one after another of Narcan in somebody's nose because it'll increase the precipitated withdrawal, right? So they're going to be feel worse and worse every more Narcan. So nobody wants to be Narcan, right? Nobody wants to feel that feeling of being Narcan. So you probably will not get a thank you from that person for saving their life directly that day. Maybe later on you will, but
interesting.
Yeah,
that's crazy, man.
Yeah, and the Narcan we have at our organization, we give it for free, right? So we have it available as a nonprofit.
Who produces Narcan? Distributed by Emergent Service Devices Inc.
Yeah, and I
Registered trademark of Emergent Operations Ireland Limited. I would assume the government has some sort of ownership in this, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of money being available now to fund this, right? That's how we get it through DCF.
Well, how convenient. They get people on a calm drug that is, they're not aggressive, but yet they come up with a very
as well. But it is a miracle drug for overdoses, you know, and without that, we'd have way more, a higher number of overdose deaths.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying I think that it is a very big money grab for whoever owns that in a very convenient way.
It is,
you know what I'm saying?
Right? So
exactly. That's what I mean.
I give you the problem, but also have the
They
solution.
probably had the solution maybe before the problem.
Well, the person who created Narcan, his son died from overdose.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so close to home.
Yeah. But naloxone's been around for, you know, the active ingredient. It's been around for years. But they turned it into a more easy to use because prior to this, you had to do it with the syringes and injection, and not everybody's comfortable doing that. So
especially if somebody's ODing on the street, you know what I mean? It's like now you just very easy solution.
Put it together and do it.
Yeah.
This is boom, boom. You just put it in their nose.
How convenient.
Good to go.
Interesting, man.
Yeah. So it is a miracle drug, and it is available in the state of Florida. There's like 400 distributors in the state of Florida that can provide that for free. If you go to isavefl.com, you plug in your zip code and you can find the nearest distributor. But also, if you could go to the store, they have it at the store now. You don't need a prescription anymore. You can go and just say, I need some Narcan. They have a nice display, you know. And
how much is one of these?
At the store, it'll be $45 to $55 for one box,
which has 2 dosages.
2 doses, yeah. Or you know, if you have access to reach out to us, we give it for free. You can check our website f-fent.org. That's our website, or check us out on social media at F_FENT_. That's on Instagram.
I'll put it under the description here in the YouTube video too, so they'll be able to find your website, your Instagram, all those good things.
We do that, and we do trainings, man. Pretty much everywhere, anywhere. I do trainings regularly at the University of Miami.
Nice.
With the students, with the fraternities. Student organizations.
I bet the frats and sororities they probably have a bunch of these on hand, right?
We've been able to do that, and that's a plus because not too far long ago they were not allowing us to put the Narcan in the universities, right? They're talking about liability laws and all this stuff, you know. Even though
let's talk about lives.
The biggest liability is to lose if somebody dies on campus.
Exactly.
But that was like all universities, you know.
Interesting, man.
FIU, and you know, I'm a graduate of FIU, and we had a mission to get it in there, and they finally have it now, which later on after we advocated for so long, but when I went to UM and I met the former dean of students for the Sandler Center, and she was amazing. She was just like, let's bring it on, let's do it. And we started having 3 trainings a semester. We started doing trainings with the fraternities. We had events, and it was...
That's cool, man. This is super cool.
So that's the goal. We do trainings at churches.
I was going to say churches.
Churches, 100%. I got training coming up with a Christian church coming up, and then a Jewish organization as well.
This is such an interesting topic.
There's no organization, no place that should not know about this.
100%.
You know, and you don't want it to be too late to like, oh, I should have known about this.
I wish I would have found fuck fentanyl a long time ago. Yeah, 100%.
That's really the goal. It's just kind of put some of the guard down and the stigma, because people when they hear, and a lot of people use these words. I don't like to use them, but I'll say it right just as addict, alcoholic, right? Those are very stigmatizing words, right? Because when I think of that, or a person that is not as, been around the scene, they think, oh, that's somebody under the bridge. That's somebody that is living on the street.
That's where my mind goes, for sure.
And that I say person with a substance use disorder, person in recovery, right? Which is more likely. And people are scared to share about. They're scared to share about their family members that have been affected because they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be like, oh no, what's wrong with that family? When the reality is that it affects every family.
Let's dive into this a little bit. So, a little bit of a heated topic. Now, let's say I see somebody and I pull up to a street light. There's a homeless person walking down the middle asking for money.
Sure.
What I always do is I leave quite a bit of space between the car in front of me so that as they walk by me, I can pull up, because it makes me feel very uncomfortable when they're standing next to my window, knocking on my window or with a sign, looking at me, like asking for stuff, right? I look at that person and I'm like, it's your fault you're that way. And I think a lot of people are in my case, particularly on the corporate side or people with work ethics. Like, hey, I actively make the decision to work every day. I'm committed to my family. It is fully in my control to go and make positive decisions, and it's fully in your control if you don't want to do that and you want to make bad decisions. Now, I understand the polar opposites of this, right? Like, can we dive into that a little bit, and maybe how somebody gets to that spot, or like just that thing as a whole, because it's so interesting.
And so we work with the houseless population, and we go out there, and we've given out Narcan, we've given out hygiene products and stuff like that, and having conversations with a lot of these folks. Some do not even, never even touched a substance, right? And it's just, look where we're living in. We're living in Miami with the rent going up, and they lost their job, and they were living paycheck to paycheck. Next thing they know, they're on the street, right? So former veterans, or there's a lot of people out there that I offer them Narcan, or I offer them stuff related to harm reduction. They're like, oh no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
And then you have some folks that do have substance use disorder, and that may have contributed to them going to the street, right? And then mental health, right? Which is,
I think that's where it all starts, right? It's in the mental health.
And not every person's gonna get that help that they need, right? And there's a lot of barriers to getting assistance, right? And so, whether it's lack of availability of housing, lack of availability of shelter, right? Or simply for somebody that may have a substance use disorder or alcohol, there's places where they don't allow that, right? And although they may want shelter, it's hard for them to stay long enough in there, right? And it's not that they don't want help and they don't want to stop using, it's that, it's, if you're worried about your next meal, if you're worried about where am I going to find some clothes, guess what? I'm less likely to worry about I got to go to treatment or do all, go to a meeting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hierarchy of the needs. Hey, let me go work on getting my food first, and then maybe I'll go to a meeting if I can. And so it's a lot of, everybody's case is different, and I've learned that. I remember going out for the homeless outreach for the first time, and I was super nervous. I was like, well, I don't know what to expect. And every single time I've been out, it's been, thank you, God bless you, can I pray for you, oh, thank you. And they start to know who we are. And it's changed my perception on that. We can't help everybody. And so I get that, when with the people coming to my window, and sometimes I'll try to give them something. Sometimes I'll be like, yeah, it's not today, but it's not something that I'm going to be able to help everybody, but we do what we can when we're out there. And then we also not only just show up, but we kind of can link them to some resources if possible. As of today, I know they have a new law that got into effect. This one's with the houseless community, right? There was another one I was talking to you about, but with the houseless community, they are able to arrest people now that are on the street, which is a very tricky situation. That
Is that specific to Florida?
Florida, yeah. And so like these areas where a lot of people, houseless people, it's not going to be there anymore, and a lot of people are going to get arrested because they're not willing to go to a shelter, or there's no shelter available because we're limited on shelters, right? We're not going to be able to put everybody,
How does Section 8 tie into this?
Some people qualify for that, but it also takes a long time to get housing, right? It doesn't happen overnight.
I own some Section 8 rental properties.
Okay, that's a good thing to provide that for people. A lot of people won't do that because they don't know. I don't know who the kind of people are going to coming in,
man.
and what is it? You know what I mean?
I feel like there's a point in somebody's life, and I think this happens with anything kind of taboo, and I would consider this kind of like a taboo or a very different way of life. And I don't know if I'm right or am I wrong, but this is just where my mind is, and I'm going to be very open and honest with you. I appreciate you sharing all these things. It's been amazing. But I feel like there's a point in somebody's life to get to like maybe like a very homeless spot, and like maybe you're on a lot of drugs, whatever the case is, where you've just kind of given up. Does that resonate, or do you see that commonly? I don't know.
Well, it's not everybody has a different situation, you know, and are there people like that? Absolutely. There's people that, you know, hey, I don't have to worry about responsibility. And
that's the thing. You know, so when I watch a lot of these TikToks, they're like, I have no responsibilities and I feel so free.
Yeah, and that's cool, and that's their decision, right? But would I say that's most people's thing? I don't think so. I think most people would like to be housed and want to be a productive member of society, and it's just certain situations have happened, right? Whether it's substance use, mental health, family situation, you know. I've met people they lost their whole family, you know, and so every situation is different, and so like to kind of put a solution or a so-called solution that doesn't kind of put that into effect. It's like, no, we got to know their situation first before we can give them a solution.
Sure.
Right? And so it's going to be different. And there's a lot of nonprofits, a lot of good organizations out there doing good work. There's a lot of organizations that are just doing the work just to do the work. It's not really some caring behind it.
Just for a paycheck, you're saying?
Yeah, paycheck. And
even though you're like nonprofits still, I think a lot of people think nonprofits and they think, oh, like there's no money involved. Like, no, if you run a nonprofit, right, you can take a salary from that, and it's tax free and all this crazy stuff.
I mean, you can't profit, but the money goes back into the nonprofit, so you can make that nonprofit big and you know, hire more people,
churches, for example,
higher salary, and you know, that's the thing is that there is
Rolex is a nonprofit.
Really?
Yes,
I did not know that.
And they loads of money, but guess where it goes to the employees, right? Like, you know what I mean? So like, it's interesting.
Yeah, and there's always different kind. Business is business. You know what I mean? There's the business aspect of it, and there's the helping aspect of it, and then there's I've experienced it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is my second nonprofit, and
did you sell your first one, or did you?
That one I had some issues with it, you know, and I had some, I would say, some people that I considered a family kind of turned on me.
Sure.
Right? And something that could have been a small issue turned into a big issue.
Sure.
Right? And so leaving that one, I learned a lot of like, not everybody's there for the best intentions, even if you have helped people. And so
for a nonprofit, are you given grant? You're given grant money for stuff like this, but is that part of that grant money your salary as well, or how does that break down?
Different. So that's the hardest part, I guess, about nonprofit is that you get grants that are for certain years, and then you got to get another one, and then you got to get you got to make sure and keep applying for grants, and donations helps a lot.
So donations is where your salary would come from.
No,
really.
Grants would be I would say is the best way to do it, unless you have a good donor, right? You have a good donor
back,
and it's we're a very small new organization, like a year and some change.
Maybe you get some donors from here. There's a lot of business people that have quite a bit of money. That
I'll tell you what,
watch this podcast.
That's how we function, is through donations and through grants. And so we're grassroots, working on little funding. So we do accept donations.
Can they donate on your website?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. If you go to f-fent.org, f-fent.org, and click the donate tab, you can either donate on PayPal.
It's a tax write-off for them too, right?
Absolutely. And there's also Give Miami Days coming up, which is November 21st. and it's local day of giving in Miami, and you pick the nonprofits that mean the most to you, that are doing the work that that's meaningful, and you can make a good donation to them. And again, it's a write off, and it's before the end of the year, and so we would hope that you can think of us during that time, and it allows us to continue the mission of doing our trainings, getting our supplies, salaries for the people that are doing it for very little right now, and honestly, that's how we keep the mission going, and we take volunteers as well all the time. So like if you don't have no money but you want to volunteer with us, we're always doing outreach with the houses community. Some fun ones that we do is like go out to the nightlife community, give out Narcan and test strips. This year we had a booth at Ultra Music Festival. And
It's a big one, huh?
it was cool. Yeah, it was the first time we were able to do that. Prior to that, they weren't ready yet, I guess.
Yeah.
But as the world is changing and they see what's going on, they know it's something necessary. And so it was a huge, great partnership that we did, and we had a booth there, hundreds of Narcan distributed. Everybody there was like so happy to see us there. And that's really what it is. It's like it's not necessarily always going.
Probably saved some lives without even knowing it, I bet.
Yeah, we got 2 confirmed.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Bro.
and so it's not always about like, oh, I'm going into a treatment center, working with people with substance use disorder and trying to help them. It's people that are out in the mix, and they're not gonna. I'm not abstinent is not an option at that very moment, right? So it's like, hey, okay, we want you to live the party another day, right? So take these cautions, right?
That's interesting.
There's some tips that I always tell them. I'm like, always carry Narcan, right? Never ever use alone, because if you're by yourself, you can't call 911. If you overdose, you can't call 911. Always test your substance, test your shit. Always call 911, right? And always be mindful of where you're getting your stuff, so just test it.
It's super interesting. Tommy, could we dive a little bit into what you learned from your experiences using, and maybe just some advice or things or whatever the case may be, but from your personal experiences?
Well, I know a lot what doesn't work, right? Because I'm 10 years in this, but I first tried when I was 18. I'm 41 now. So it's never give up on somebody. So they gave up on the first time that I relapsed, right? I wouldn't be here, and it's a different environment.
You wouldn't have your masters, have flipped it around, wouldn't have started this nonprofit. You've had a complete change, man.
So I'll tell you, like when I started using up till I'm 30, multiple arrests, Baker Act, in the psych ward, suicide attempts.
What's the psych ward like? There's a Netflix movie, and it's like there's this female who's trapped in the psych ward. She's saying she's not crazy, but the doctors are saying she's crazy, so she can't leave. And I always look at that, and I'm like, what a blurred line.
I'll tell you what, it was you said that it was the worst experience you had when you went to jail. That was one of the worst experiences I had, because I put myself there, but when I was
Voluntarily?
there,
Okay.
No, I had a suicide attempt, right? So
Okay.
I knew what I did led me to be in the psych ward, right? But when I got there, I was like, I don't belong here. All these people.
These other crazy people got so much worse than me, that type of thing.
They have different issues going on, and people talking to themselves, and people,
Bro, people talking to themselves is
it's
so
just,
bad.
It was eye opening.
Yeah. Traumatizing.
Traumatizing, and these are sick people, and so it's
That forces change, though,
But
right?
I'll tell you what, I was sick too, and I was trying to put myself not relating to them, but what I did led me to be there, right? So
Accountability.
Accountability. Over time, I was like, you know what, I deserve to be there, and that's what happened. And so all these consequences that happened were, they were tough and stuff, but that was not what got me to stop. What got me to stop was the pain I had in the hole I had in my heart. You know what I mean? And the effect I had on my family. And that's the worst part is knowing that I hurt the people I love the most.
Sure.
Right? And they weren't necessarily the ones that knew how to help me the best. Right? Despite them, the ones loving me the most. And
That blurs the line, right? Because love is kind of like...
love is not enough.
Yeah.
it's not enough.
Sometimes they're too nice.
Well, it can be
Too loving.
and I don't like this word, but enabling, where they're
100%.
trying to help, but it hurts in the long run.
100%. They got to be assholes a little bit, right?
And then, well, kind of, right. And it's hard for somebody that loves you so much to do that.
100%.
Like some treatment centers, some people, professionals, like, you have to let him go and kick him out and don't give him nothing. And to tell that to a Hispanic family that is all about family, it's like, that's impossible.
Hell yeah.
Right? But over time, realizing that there is support and help out there, and then not necessarily the people that love me the most. It's people I may have just met. I do, and that's what happens on a regular basis for me, is that I meet people and I can connect with them better than their family can, and they get me more than my family can, right? Because we've been through similar experiences, and those are the people that can really help the most. And so, like, when I'm sharing about my past and my story, this is something I was like so ashamed of, the things I've done in my life, and
it's hard to be vulnerable about that too. But once you're kind of removed from it, then it kind of flows, and then you really start to impact lives by sharing that story.
That is
right?
exactly right. It's
vulnerable.
It's a huge tool in helping people. When I share things, where I would say to some people, they're like, "Oh my God, you did that." And I share it to somebody.
Not you, Tommy. No way.
Exactly. But
I can't see that.
A lot of people, they don't see my past. They're like, no way. But I'll share it with somebody that's going through that right now, and they're like, "Oh,
you turned out like this. I can do that too."
They build that trust immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately, and so that's the biggest tool. And so if anybody's like going through something right now, I would tell them to keep trying. Right? Eventually, it will stick. I did not get into recovery the first time I tried, the second time, or third, or fourth. It was constant. Never give up, and find those people that are doing it. You know what I mean? As an entrepreneur, as a businessman, right? You have mentors, right? That taught you how to do that, right? Same thing with recovery. It's like, don't do it by yourself. Find those people that are doing it and can guide you through that process.
Very interesting. Yeah. When people are talking to themselves on the side of the street, what is that? I always, they call tweakers. Everyone calls them tweakers.
Well,
and they're like yelling,
I can't
talking
generalize all of them. Some of them may be under the influence. Some of them may be experiencing schizophrenia. Depends. I would have to see what they're doing and get them a diagnosis. But
I just remember the people like yelling across the street, like, and they always get aggressive, and it's like, "I'll fuck you up," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" Across the street, walk around. Yeah. It's like, God damn.
Yeah, everybody's different, but I probably was that guy when
There's Tommy. That's crazy. Okay, what are some cool or crazy, heartwarming, troublesome stories maybe from the psych ward?
From the psych ward? Well, I was there like I think twice, and it was like overnight, so it wasn't. I didn't experience too much. I just know it was.
So you were in and out.
Someplace I didn't want to be, and I did everything I could to get out of there.
I used to live by a psych ward. Now that I say, so in Madison, Wisconsin, I had a house on the lake, but it was the north side of the lake, and there was an old psych ward right there, and they had a security guard that would do circles around it. Oh my God! And then my sister's into ghosts, so she can see ghosts and shit. So we drove through there, and she was like, "Oh, there's somebody, and you'd see people behind the fences."
Right? Yeah. No. That I would watch something on that. I would watch a documentary on that. But yeah, no. I mean, psych ward so they have a saying in the 12 steps. It's like
in the what?
In the 12-step meetings.
Okay.
It's jails, institution, and death. Right. So if you don't get into recovery, these are your options: jails, institution, and death. Right. And I experienced pretty much all of those. Right. Going to jail, institutions, treatment centers, psych wards, and then death. I was wanting to die. I was on death's door numerous times. Right. And so for people that are feeling like that, it's. I mean, I'm living proof that you're able to get out of that, and I see it on a daily basis. That people they can't even imagine what my life used to be like, and so give it a chance, and not everybody recovery is the same. So it doesn't mean that you're destined to go to 12-step meetings all your life, and it could be something different. But the only way to find out is for you to explore and to try that.
What are some crazy stories, or sad, funny, happy from jail?
From jail. One of the times I went, it was one of my DUIs. I got 3 DUIs, right? And one of the ones I had to do weekends in jail, and
Let out during the week and go in the weekend.
yeah, so I didn't have to tell my job that I was going to jail. So I would get out of work, and then go go to the jail and get in there and get out in Monday morning and then go back to work.
That's crazy.
Right, and it was weird, man. I remember seeing a guy have a seizure in there, and it was weird also because at that point I was not drinking, and so I was getting punished for something that I did while I was drinking, and I was going into jail completely sober, and I was trying to better my life already, and it was going into punish me for things I had done before, and so it was a constant reminder of like, hey, this is definitely not
Don't want to be here.
you don't want to be here, right? So take care of this stuff, and now, so you don't have to be there again. And then something recent that has happened is that when you get a DUI, they put you in this program. It's called like the Advocate Program, and you have a like a case manager and a probation officer and all this stuff. And I remember going through there, and I was like, man, I got to pay all this money. I got to do it, And then fast forward, they asked me to be on their board. And so now I'm on the board of that program that I was like a client
A
of.
part of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a
Full flip, man.
yeah. And so it's kind of changed where they, using my lived experience to help them now. And a lot of these things happen like full circle moments, right? Another one was the first time I ever got arrested was at a middle school by my house. And we were skipping school, and we happened to drive by there, and they caught us with open containers, and we were fighting other people. And then the last time I've been arrested was at that same middle school because I happened to just get pulled over there, and it was my last DUI.
First and last.
First and last. So when I was like 17, and when I was like I don't know, I was 29 or 30 or something.
That's
you
crazy.
know? And now I'm not gonna mention the name of the school, but like they've asked me to go speak to the kids
Wow.
in that middle school, and so that's another.
That's going to be a great story when you can tell those kids first and last time.
Yeah.
Like that's so
Yeah.
impactful, I guess.
It's just like full circle moment. And same thing. I'm speaking at my old high school. That one I could say is a Killian High School, right? I remember my first time drinking. I was in those halls, and and then going back to go tell them about my story, and that's a full circle moment of just like if you keep trying, if you get the support of other people, things like this can happen. I got to give it to God and to the people that have helped me.
That's amazing, man. So cool that you're kind of on the flip side now and done all these amazing things, accomplishments. How was going to school you said in your 30s, right? Because, so when I joined the military, for example, I thought I was going to be one of the older military guys because everybody goes in at 18. I went in at 26. There were some 43-year-olds there, right? Like everybody's at a different point in life. So how was that experience? Because I feel like a lot of people are in that moment and they're like, nah, I'm just not going to go because I'm too old.
Yeah, I definitely had that. Definitely had that I'm not able to do this anymore. That voice in my head that says you can't do this, and that's throughout my active addiction, I tried to go to school and I would drop out, stop showing up, get kicked out, get W's, get an F, and so to get my associate's degree, I first tried, I believe like 2001, and I didn't get my associate's degree to 2013. Right, so the 2-year degree took me like 12 years, right?
Yeah.
But no one ever asked me how long it took me to get that, right? And so that was the first time, like, I was like, well, wow, I did it. I actually proved myself wrong because I didn't even believe I could do it. But every step was
That's a win under your belt. When you do something that you don't think you can do, it's a big like confidence builder,
I couldn't.
booster.
It was so many times I tried, and I'm like, this is the time. I'm going to do it. And then I end up going to sell my books and going to drink and and so getting into FIU, starting my bachelor's, kind of like, man, all these young kids, man, what is this going on? And
There
then,
probably wasn't online school back then either.
I had a couple online.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it was just it's a different experience of like, oh man, we're gonna go on happy hour after this class and doing this, we're gonna do that. You know what I mean? And so much so I had a relapse while I was at FIU, and I had 3 years into recovery, and a lot of stuff led up to that. I had stopped doing my recovery stuff and going to the main part of campus. They have a Chili's, and I had my first drink in over 3 years, and then I started ripping and running again. You know what I mean? And that was just so easy access on campus. And so when I got back into recovery, it was like something I wanted to focus on while I was on campus. It was like to do something in recovery. And so we started a group on campus called Panthers for Recovery.
Nice.
And that's when I started really having a genuine college experience, because I actually started hanging out at school.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Before I was like in and out,
Yeah.
trying to get in and out. And so we did the tailgates, sober tailgates, and movies, and hanging out with other students.
That's amazing.
And then I'm constantly talking to them about like, you know what? I don't feel like I belong here, but they felt the same way, and we just did it anyway, continued anyway. Where I'm like way older than the rest of my classmates. Like, man, I'm all tatted up. I'm like, these are all kids. You know what I mean? And then still being able to do that. And so we're our own worst enemy a lot of the times. That's why we got to talk to other people and kind of, you know.
One interesting thing about this podcast, I would say of the last 4 episodes, I think 3 of the people have been to jail, for example, which I would consider myself more corporate leaning, but not so tarnished that I can't understand your experiences and like haven't been to prison or jail and all. It's just I'm learning so much through this podcast, and it has been so amazing. Like, if it wasn't for this podcast, I don't know if we'd be sitting here. I don't know if I would have opened my mind up to fuck fentanyl. Like, and it's so interesting. And one thing that we were talking about, which you just mentioned, is like you have tattoos, and a lot of people look at that a certain way, right? Why do you think it is that maybe it's more of the corporate side looking at tattoos as a negative connotation or a negative thing? Can we dive into that a little bit and maybe try to break that down?
I think it just comes from, you know, the origins of, you know, people incarcerated getting tattoos in jail and stuff like that, and people looking down on that. And even within my own family, you know, when I first started getting tattoos, it was you know, why are you doing that to your body and all that?
That's what my mom says. She should never get fucking tattoos. I'm like, okay.
That's what she said. That's what she said. And I kind of did whatever, you know, when I was under the influence, I was doing a lot of things.
Sure.
But the good part is that I can break stigma too. I can break stereotypes too. And that's the best thing, is like a lot of people like would be, not necessarily want to come talk to me. They don't know.
It's intimidating.
Yeah. So when they get to know me and kind of, wow, it's like, that's really what it's all about, you know. And it's you know, with person with a substance use disorder, tattoos, criminal background, all this stuff, but can flip it, you know, and be a productive member of society, and not only that, help other people, right? And so that is the goal, is to let people believe that is possible and not make judgment, you know.
I think the last guy on here said he trusts people with tattoos a lot more than people without tattoos, because the people without tattoos typically are more judgmental. Maybe when they do a crime, it's a white collar crime, and they're stealing $100 million and affecting 300 families, whereas somebody who has maybe tattoos or whatever, maybe they've done a crime, but it hasn't affected that many people. So there's 2 wildly different and opposing sides to this. And when he said that, he goes, like, I would consider myself a fairly judgmental person. And this podcast is opening up my mind in a whole nother way. I think judgment comes from lack of knowledge and lack of empathy. Like, everybody has their own scenario. You don't know. Maybe I meet somebody just a neighbor walking by, for example, and their mom passed away today, and they're having a really tough time, and they give me a snarky comment. Like, who am I to judge them? I have no idea what's going on in their life. Or, you know what? So it's just opening my mind, and I'm really appreciating just the differences in humanity.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's been, I'm judgmental too, right?
I think everybody is inherently.
And it's just has gone down a little bit more as I hear more experiences of people, and people in recovery are nice people. They are some of the most productive people, some of the most smartest people, and you couldn't tell who's who, right? I could run into somebody in recovery, and I would never know that they were in recovery.
Sure.
Based on how they look.
Sure.
Right, and so people have judgments, and they have preconceived notions of what they look like. That's why I don't use those words, addicts, alcoholic, right? Because I used to introduce myself to a group of kids or like in a classroom. Hey, I'm Tommy. I'm alcoholic, and then you get a weird look. And, it's a negative connotation on
100%, man.
But when I say it in a group of a meeting, everybody knows. Hey, we're good. We're good people. It's not nothing bad. It's something we're proud of.
Sure.
But out in the real world, we don't. We want to actually put a positive note on that for those people that are kind of not knowing. And it's not because they don't want to. Most people will want to learn more. Especially if they have had some interaction with their family.
Sure. It's very interesting, man. Tommy, anything else you want to leave the audience with? Pieces of advice, thoughts, opinions, things you wanted to say that you didn't get to say before we wrap this up here?
Yeah, well, just mainly is that we want people to be safe, right? We want people to we're not telling you to use or not to use. We want you to be safe. So if you need Narcan, please reach out to us. If you need test strips, reach out to us. We do have events constantly. We have some trainings coming up, I believe. We have a couple coming up at the University of Miami. We have a training coming up at the Hialeah Branch Library. So all our events will be listed on our social media and our website, which I think you put it.
Yeah, I'm going to put that in the description of the YouTube video.
And then if you guys are looking to support any organization, please consider donating to us. Give Miami Day is around the corner, November 21st. It's a good opportunity. We'll have some opportunities to get matched on a few donations, so you can double your money. Or you could just go to our website and do it through PayPal charity. And I just appreciate you having me here and sharing about our organization.
Thank you so much, man. I learned so much. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.